Welcome to the North American Spine Society Annual Meeting 2020, the virtual experience. My name is Dr. Saad Chaudhary. I'm the Associate Fellowship Director at the Mount Sinai Hospital in New York City. It is my pleasure to talk to you guys about fellowship selection and give you some tips and pointers, as well as a generalized overview of the process. First and foremost, I want to thank the NASS Education Committee, and especially the folks that are involved with fellowship residency track for education. A lot of thought goes into putting together the curriculum, and I find the topics and the courses that are put together to be as useful as we hope them to be for you. So let's first start with some basic disclosures. I don't have anything specific that is conflicting in this talk. However, as I mentioned, I am the co-director for Spine Surgery Fellowship at Mount Sinai Hospital and may have some insight and perhaps some biases that get revealed in the process. I am an academic spine surgeon in New York City. So why do people or orthopedic surgeons or neurosurgeons choose to pursue a fellowship in spine? So over the course of years, there's been a lot of technical advancements, and spine probably leads the forefront of new technology and innovation, and how we utilize various techniques in improving our quality of care. We're sort of new to the field of minimally invasive surgery, but we have significant science and technology we incorporate in delivery of care, from minimally invasive surgery to deformity surgery. So it behooves anyone who's interested in practicing the art of spine surgery to seek out further expertise in a fellowship training to be able to deliver this level of high care to their patients. So again, most people want to pursue some special skills that they want to acquire. However, for various other folks, you may choose to do a fellowship with specific focus in deformity surgery or minimally invasive surgery, so that you can enhance those potential holes or deficits in your training through residency, and can deliver those types of techniques and provide that care to your patients. Other than honing in your surgical skill sets, fellowships also provide significant time with a group of mentors or a few mentors that have dedicated their life, or their professional life at least, to the field of spine surgery. And it can be invaluable to work with folks both in the clinic and in the OR setting. Anyone who has been doing spine surgery for some time will tell you that in addition to your surgical skills, really the most important part of successful outcomes is patient selection and assessing who would benefit from surgical intervention. So that is something that you will hone in and develop over time, but the one-year fellowship can really give you a jump start on that. Marketability is another reason why some people will pursue fellowship, specifically if it's a fellowship geared towards, again, deformity or minimally invasive or trauma type of practice. If that is the niche that you want to develop in your future life in the area where you will be practicing, this can be quite helpful. It always helps to kind of know what you want to do and where you want to practice, as those local regional practice trends can certainly play a role in what type of fellowship you pursue. Let's talk a little bit about the landscape of spine surgery fellowship. 10 to 15 years ago, there was no fellowship match, and several of us during the process would in fact be challenged that we couldn't interview at all the places that we liked, as you would get offered a position, and if you took too long to respond, you may lose the position, and therefore you didn't have the option to go interview all the locations or places that you wanted to. So in fact, a fellowship and the fellowship match process has improved quite a bit, and I think it works very well for the applicants, and it is in your favor. So I think it's a great thing, and NASS is committed, along with the other subspecialty organizations, to continuing to maintain the integrity of the match process. There are about 60 participating programs in the SF match. 126 positions in total are offered. This is the San Francisco Match 2019 data, and based on that data, 110 positions were filled. That left 16 vacancies. Further granular details reveal that about 138 fellows were applying for a position in spine surgery, and out of that, 121 were solely applying for spine, while there were some who were applying for more than one subspecialty. Out of that 121, 110 matched, so the match rate is fairly high, and 93 out of the 110 were allopathic school candidates, while 13 were osteopaths, and another 4 were foreign graduates. The average number of applications that people filled out or programs that they sought interest in was about 29, which is a fair number. So out of 120 some, vast majority of people ended up matching in their first or second choice. So 57 matched their first choice, 18 their second, and 12 their third choice. So overall indicating that the match truly does work in the favor of the candidate, and you should vet out the programs fairly carefully and make sure the way you set up your rank list, it truly reflects your interests and where you think you'd be the happiest or best fit. So how do you find a good fit for a program? Certainly, I think mentorship and your relationships with the spine surgeons at your residency program or other mentors through either research work or med school can be fairly invaluable in this process. They will guide you as to the various aspects of the programs that are available. Furthermore, you may know some senior residents or some graduating chiefs who may have been accepted to certain fellowship programs, and they can also give you feedback. And there's always various web-based sites that can give you some insight about the different aspects of fellowship. And I think it's a small enough community where when you're on the trail for the interviews, you can also gather a fair amount of information. Prior to that, however, you can visit the NASS Fellowship Directory or the SF Match website or the AANS or other resources like AAOS or AO Spine, and they all have fairly detailed information regarding fellowships and the various breakdowns of surgical cases and types of surgeries that are being performed at these institutions. And these websites are maintained on a fairly regular basis, and the programs are asked to update this on a regular basis. So the data and the information is usually fairly accurate. So moving forward with the actual process, if you're an orthopedic resident, you start the match process or the application process in your 4th year. It's almost a year and a half to 2 years before you would be matriculating in that specific fellowship. So it's a long sought out process. However, if you have certain ideas that you'd be interested in spine, it makes sense to start thinking about these things even towards the middle or end of your 3rd year, so that you can not only focus on some research and buff up your resumes, but also start thinking about locations and programs that you might want to match at. So the interviews typically start in the late winter time and they continue through spring, and the match is in April. This coming up year, the match will be on April 20th, 2021, and that'll be the match for fall of 2022. If you're a neurological surgeon, you have 2 options for fellowship training. In the past, the vast majority were seeking out infolded fellowships. However, now there's more of a trend of cross-training. So many neurosurgical residents have come through our program or other orthopedic programs, and that tends to be in the postgraduate years. And so the process is quite similar. You have to apply through the San Francisco match with similar deadlines and dates to follow. Some important dates to keep an eye out for: the registration for San Francisco match starts on August 3rd. It's a $100 fee for the registration, and the registration stays open through the match process. However, I would not wait till 2021 to do this. Start early. Once you register, you're encouraged to fill out the central application, and the target date to filling that out is just about now. It's supposed to be in September. And the interview period again starts around the December timeframe and goes through late March. Majority of the programs will ask you to submit again your match list in April. The exceptions to the interview process are some folks get interviewed during the national meetings, such as the NASS annual meeting or a Cervical Spine Research Society annual meeting. 2020 is a special exception, as most of these meetings are held virtually, and so there will be no opportunity to interview in person at those annual meetings. Having said that, majority of the fellowship interviews will likely be performed virtually as well due to coronavirus issues. Other dates to remember: submit your rank list on Tuesday, April the 13th of next year, and match day will be April 20th, 2021, a week after the submission of the rank list. And the day after, which is April 21st, 2021, is when any of the vacant spots can be looked into and filled up as needed. So 2 ideal questions I think you should ask yourself as you're preparing for fellowship interviews and your application process is what do you want to do? Meaning, what type of practice do you envision yourself to have in the future? And what location do you want to do it in? As that can often help you choosing the right fellowship. So with regards to what you want to do, that's specifically geared towards the subject matter of your practice. Do you want to do bread and butter degenerative cases? Do you envision yourself working at a trauma center, working in the spinal cord injury unit? Do you think that you'll be happy doing mostly deformity-based surgery or minimally invasive surgery? Those types of questions are important to ask, as you'd want to choose a fellowship that gives you the best education and knowledge base to pursue that. It's also important to know if you're going to do academics or private practice, as that could sway, again, your decision as to which type of fellowship you're going to want to pursue. There are also regional trends for spine care. For example, spine surgery in Boston is very different from spine surgery that might be practiced in Florida, and so on and so forth. So you'd want to be prepared for the location that you think you'll ultimately settle in, and make sure that you are competitive with the local environment and you can deliver those types of surgical procedures. And in fact, if there are certain cases that may not be performed in that region that you're looking at, you may want to get specialty care and training in those specific procedures. So that could give you a little bit of a cutting edge or a niche in those areas. When it comes to selecting a program, it's a very personal choice and decision process. And again, I would encourage you to critically evaluate the programs, but also when you're interviewing with the various programs, get a feel and a sense for your fit. This is the time where you're really going to be concentrating on honing in and fine-tuning your skill sets, and you want to do it in an environment which is collegial and an environment which will give you a good basic background that forever you'll be standing on. So how you get along with the fellowship directors, what your goals ultimately are quite important in making that determination. If you feel that you have certain weaknesses during your residency training, you would want to select a program that hopefully would supplement those weak areas. You also want a program that concentrates on surgical care, but gives you opportunities in the office as well as perhaps a fellows clinic, where you could evaluate patients on your own and start developing a protocol of how you will select the right patient for spine surgical care. Some people flourish in a mentorship small model. Other people prefer a large faculty staff to train under. That's a personal choice, and you'd want to be introspective about that. Again, whether you're going to practice in an academic setting or in a private practice may determine whether you want an academic powerhouse or a private practice to do your fellowship in, as each possesses certain pros and cons and there's a lot to gain from how your fellowship directors and mentors practice spine surgery, as well as how they've built up their practice that you can take with you to your own practices. Research and lifestyle is also important. If research is a passion of yours, you'd want to make sure you look into that when you're interviewing. And similarly, if you have families and other obligations that you need to coordinate your work schedule for, those would be the types of things you want to consider. It's very important to speak to the current and previous fellows from the program, as they can give you fairly unbiased and good insight as to the program, as they don't have much to lose, and hopefully they'll give you good, honest information. You also want to know what type of case volume and case mix happens in the fellowship. Some of this information, however, you can get ahead of time prior to the interview. The next few slides will show you some of the resources that you can use. This is from the NASS Fellowship Directory, and this is some typical information that you can find. And again, it's fairly updated information. This is my program where we give a breakdown of the amount of operative care you can expect to see in the non-operative care, the clinic or research obligations. So it's about 80% OR responsibilities and 20% clinic, research, call, etc. Furthermore, this is usually broken down by the region of spine. So our program tends to offer a fairly good and well-balanced education and exposure to cervical and the thoracolumbar spine. And this is something worth looking into. Lastly, there's usually a breakdown of the types of cases that you'll see. Degenerative cases versus deformity, trauma, or tumor. Again, at our place, it's about 40% degen, 25 to 20% deformity. Tumor and trauma are both roughly about 10%. And there's a fair amount of pediatric surgery that you'll get exposed to with one of my partners, Dr. Baron Lahner, who does a lot of pediatric deformity as well as some cutting-edge minimally invasive deformity surgery. Some additional considerations that you want to think about when selecting and choosing your fellowship is location, salary that you'll be getting. Typically, as a fellow, if you're an orthopedic resident, you'll get a PGY-6 salary based on your years of training. If you're coming from a neurosurgical program, you'll probably get PGY-7 or perhaps 8 salary. You'll usually get the standard benefits such as health insurance, some vacation options, housing. It's also important to know that most of us will start the credentialing process for you several months in advance, 6 to 8 months in advance. And when you get this paperwork from your fellowship locations, please be prompt in returning that information, as that is fairly critical in your starting on time and being productive. If you're credentialed and licensed in the state that you'll be doing your fellowship and you're ready to go on day one and you can start operating and being productive. If you're lagging in those aspects, you may not be able to operate or do certain clinical responsibilities as you start, and that just ends up being a poor way to start your fellowship. Lastly, if you're probably doing a fellowship in a private practice setup, it's important to know what type of malpractice coverage you have. Majority will offer some sort of a tail coverage, as you don't want to be held liable for a case that you did in fellowship 2 to 3 years down the line and find out that you don't have the appropriate insurance coverage. Lastly, take this, even though this is sort of an exciting time and a process that may sometimes be run with emotions, make an objective checklist for yourself. After you're done with each program, through your interview process, make sure you utilize something like this. This is right off the AAOS website. I'm sure other ones have this, have a similar checklist. You want to create some sort of a quantitative analysis and a scoring system so you can truly and objectively rank one program to the next, and use this before submitting your rank list. Thank you for your time. Typically, I'd be happy to answer any questions live, but if you have any questions, you can always email me at my first name.last name@mountsinai.org.